Hello everyone, welcome to the eCOA ePro Digital Week, brought to you by the organisers of the Global Clinical Trials Event and Content Series, where eCOA is electronic clinical outcome assessments and ePro is electronic patient-reported outcomes. My name is Patrick Murphy, and I'll be your host for today's session titled Bringing Solutions to Electronic Implementation of COAs. First, I'll cover some quick housekeeping items. If you experience difficulties with audio or advancing slides, refresh your screen with F5. If you're experiencing other issues, hit the question mark button to receive assistance. At any time during the presentation, you can submit your questions into the Q&A window on the left-hand side of your screen. In 24 hours, you will receive a link to watch the recording of this session. You can also download a few featured articles in the resource list box on the right side of your screen. Let's now begin by introducing our brilliant speakers for this session. Firstly, we have Fotini Sakalaropoulou, Account Manager at MAPI Research Trust. We also have Florent Campo Paisa, eCOA Project Lead at MAPI Research Trust. Thank you for joining us today, both Fotini and Florent. I will now hand it over to the both of you to begin your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patrick, for the introduction. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you all. Welcome everyone to MAPI Research Trust webinar, Bringing Solutions to Electronic Implementation of COAs. Thank you all for being here. So allow me to introduce myself. My name is Fotini Sakalaropoulou. I work within the eCOA team at MAPI Research Trust. Just a few things about myself. I have been with MAPI since a few years now. Initially, I was part of the licensing team, managing licensing projects and providing access to COAs for sponsors and all our clients. And I'm with the eCOA team since a few years now. My role there is to oversee the validation of an electronic version of a questionnaire, review and approve this through specific processes that we have put in place, make sure actually that everything is going as according to plan. And this is the purpose of our presentation today. We have created an overview and are here to share our experience with you. I'd like also to introduce my co-speaker and colleague, Florent Campo Paisa, a member also of the eCOA team at MAPI. He will cover a good part of our presentation today. So what we hope that you will get from today, what we want to talk to you about today, is the COA digitization process going from paper to electronic version. We will see the main steps and the associated risks for COA digitization. We will identify the biggest challenges that we have come across in the eCOA development. And further down the road, we will try to demonstrate the strategy that MAPI has in place to streamline the process of digitization. We're here actually to give you our account and what are the biggest challenges and what we can do. So let's go. What is a COA? A COA, a clinical outcome assessment, is a validated questionnaire or scale or instrument. We can call it either of these names. They're equally acceptable in the industry. That has been created by one or more developers to provide evidence regarding clinical benefit. It is intended to show how patients feel or function in their daily life as a result of a treatment. Each COA is designed to measure a concept or a group of concepts across several domains of interest. Many of you might know already that there are 4 types of COAs: PROs, patient-reported outcomes, observer-reported outcomes, clinician-reported outcomes, ClinROs, performance outcomes. We're working mostly with PROs, actually, completed by patients or participants in a study or a trial, and with ClinROs that are completed by clinicians or physicians or medical personnel based on their observation of the patients. The COAs are created and validated in paper formats, reason being that the electronic administration is actually quite a recent development. Scientists, experts in their field, have worked for years, maybe, before they're able to present a fully validated COA. A questionnaire is a product of thorough research and effort. eCOA has been designed for a specific population and has been tested meticulously with what could be actually thousands of subjects or participants to a study to bring forth the results or the data that were intended. And it has undergone a peer review publication process. When all of that has been done, we can say that it is a validated instrument that can be safely used in clinical settings to measure the concept for which it was created. All that is to say that the COA in a paper format has its properties and it's supposed to be applied as such. The validation of a COA needs to establish that it actually measures the clinical outcome that it is intended to measure. Its performance can be relied upon when used in a clinical setting to provide indeed a given interpretation in the specified context where it is used. So, where are we now? Transitioning from paper to electronic. We're witnessing a massive transition from paper to electronic in all aspects of life. This is obviously reflected in the COA industry, where there is a push for electronic capture of data. COVID actually fast-tracked that at the time and in those conditions where COA still needed to be accessible. A turn to electronic became really obvious and has been established ever since. So now we have eCOAs, the digitized version of the paper form, with which the participant or the subject will complete on an electronic device. The electronic versions of the paper COAs, the eCOAs, are created by vendors that have actually the technology to perform such a task, meaning to digitize a COA, and structures to support electronic capture of data. A validated software development process, from managing and shipping devices to even a help desk support. Why eCOA now? Why is it so relevant? So there are many reasons. With the eCOA, the electronic clinical outcome assessments, we have quality of data. Responses are selected and registered electronically. When this is done properly, there will be little margin for error, and they can be considered reliable and thus useful for their purpose. The access to the data is easier in the sense that the data can be collected easily and simultaneously at any time of the day or at any place in the world. We have various examples of studies that take part in different sides of the world, and participants can now access the COA easily, whereas in the past, that could have been more challenging. eCOA is cost-saving. Lots of costs of calculations exist to show that they can save cost, actually. Solutions exist for an electronic version to be reused throughout studies, and this can be quite beneficial, actually, in lots of cases. eCOA is time-saving as far as the collection and the analysis of the data is concerned. And eCOA improves the patient experience. Completing a COA, a questionnaire, now can be very inherent to the patient's life. They can do it at any place they find convenient, the time of the day that they find convenient, without having to go to a site, probably using their own device, their very own phone or the tablet. The participation can be done when actually the conditions of the questionnaire allow it, actually, at the time or the place that the patient can feel comfortable. Who is concerned here? Let's see. The eCOA concerns all the stakeholders that are involved in the study. Sponsors that own and run the studies that use the COAs. CROs that manage the studies on behalf of sponsors. E-vendors, as mentioned earlier, who are able to carry out the task of digitization and bring the electronic solutions to the study and to the people. Licensing authorities, such as ourselves here at MAPI Research Trust. Licensing authorities play an important role as they have the knowledge to how and on what conditions a COA or eCOA can be used. Licensing authorities do their effort to get familiar with this trend in the industry, and they are able to bring this knowledge to the developers of COAs, on behalf of whom we manage the COAs, and apply the knowledge for a proper digitization. You will hear more about that later in this presentation. Involved stakeholders are also the developers and the copyright holders, who are major players here. It is them that create the COAs based on the research and make them available to the users. And participants, who are the ones who will give their insight and feedback and whose experience we want to measure. It is them that make all this exist. The involved stakeholders are regulated by authorities, such as the FDA or the EMA, as well as the CPATH, whose existence is quite important. Experts from the field get together to share experience and are creating the rules and work towards establishing best practices in order for a study to be held properly and in good terms. At this point, we'd like to mention actually tomorrow's webinar, managed by Scotty Kern, Executive Director of the CPATH eCOA Consortium. He will be speaking for CPATH's eCOA Consortium, Progressing the Science of eCOA Through Collaboration. You can find the exact hour for the presentation in the Digital Week's eCOA ePRO program. So, going from COA to eCOA. The principle here, the goal, is for the eCOA to be able to show equivalency between the electronic version and the paper version, to show that the eCOA can be used to collect the same data as the validated paper version. Because if there is lack of equivalency, that could mean risk. We risk that this is questioned by regulators. This risk could mean delays, could mean rejections, resubmissions that might have several consequences to an already planned action where many people or subjects could be involved. Or lack of equivalency could prohibit a meaningful comparison with other studies, and actually we reach a dead end instead of the conclusion we were looking for. Therefore, how can we minimize the risks associated with COA digitization? First and foremost, we should respect the COA integrity and the requirements that each developer has or could have. Starting by the basics, the content and the format of the original paper version, and the requirements that might pertain to a specific COA. They are there for a reason, so we should take them into consideration. We could show adherence to eCOA best practices. Mentioned just a while ago, eCOA best practices are developed for the benefit in the field. Being aware and up to date with the latest best practices could minimize any risk. As this is an exponentially growing field, we learn new things every day. Being up to date and adhere to eCOA best practices is key. Another way to minimize the risks of COA digitization is to protect the integrity of the data that is collected in studies on behalf of sponsors. We will discuss about that further. And also having in mind an optimal experience for the user. We should take all actions to avoid any risk linked to COA digitization. I'm going to hand over to Florent right now. He will speak further about our strategy for the certification of COAs.
Thank you, Fotaini, and thank you very much to everyone in the audience for attending this webinar. So my name is Florent Campo-Paisa, and I'm also part of the eCOA team at MAPI Research Trust, where I manage projects on eCOA certification. So taking into account the risks we have covered earlier for digitization, we will now review our strategy at MAPI for the certification of eCOAs. So who are we at MAPI Research Trust? As a licensing authority, we act as representative for developers, COA developers, to make sure that the integrity of validated COAs is protected in all processes. As such, we manage the licensing and the distribution of more than 5,600 COAs today. In the context of digitization, we review and certify electronic versions of COAs on behalf of developers who usually don't have the time and may lack the expertise in the eCOA field to know exactly what are the rules and best practices for electronic implementation. This takes the form of screenshot review projects in which we ensure that equivalency between paper and electronic version is respected, so that we have a protection of the sponsor's datasets and we ensure that the questionnaire is used as intended by the developer in its validated paper version. There is an increasing number of screenshot review projects, and they cover a lot of variety in terms of questionnaire type, from PROs to clean rows, and also a variety of therapeutic areas, from skin disease to cancer and COVID. So we were saying that screenshot review are performed to establish and to produce certificates for the use of electronic version. So why is it necessary? To answer this question, we will review the data from the first quarter of this year to see how important it is to review the electronic forms of the questionnaires. As you can see here, almost all of the projects we have handled since the beginning of the year required changes to be made to the initial electronic version provided by the client. If we break down the numbers, even more interesting and more scary, let's say, more than a quarter of the projects had substantial changes to be made. Substantial changes, meaning that there was no equivalency anymore between the electronic version proposed by the client and the validated paper version. So here we understand that it's really crucial to identify the changes and implement them before certifying electronic versions. In the next slides, we will cover real-life examples of what we can encounter during screenshot reviews to see how these substantial changes can affect the electronic version. Here, you are presented with, on the left-hand side, an approved version of an electronic screen approved by the developer. And on the right-hand side, you have a screenshot that has been provided at the beginning of a screenshot review project by the client. Here, I will draw your attention to the question text. For the same question of the same questionnaire, you can see that the content is different between what has been accepted and approved with the developer and what has been submitted by the client. So here, you can see that eyelid droop and double vision, the concept is completely different, meaning that this question, if administered to a user, will not assess the same concept, and there is no equivalency between the proposed electronic version and the accepted, validated paper version. So here, there is the crucial need to restore the integrity of the questionnaire. Another example here is similar in terms of what is different between what is accepted here and approved by the author and what has been provided by the client. So you see on the left-hand side that in the response options, you have some bolding for some words. This is present in the paper version and also in the electronic version approved by the author. So this is an integral part of the questionnaire. In the version provided by the client, there is a lack of emphasis of bolding in the response options. And there is also a disconnection in content, but here we need to draw your attention to the fact that not only the content in text, but also the formatting of the questionnaire is integral part of the validated version of the questionnaire. And forgetting about these elements will jeopardize the equivalency between electronic version provided and the accepted validated version. The last example we want to show you today doesn't relate to content of the paper version, but here we want to draw your attention to the response options displayed here. On the left-hand side, you have the original paper version for a specific questionnaire with the response options listed for question 4 and 5. And here you have the screenshot provided by the client during the screenshot review process. So the content in terms of text is the same, but here the use of green is something that is not recommended at all in eCOA best practices. So we can see that not only we need to make sure during screenshot review process and eCOA certification that questionnaire integrity is respected, but also that there is adherence to eCOA best practices. So we can see that there is a high frequency of requested changes and a variety of deviations in screenshot review projects. So what could be the reason for the frequency of these issues during a certification process? So this, sorry, this we can answer this question by considering the challenges that that are faced by e-vendors and stakeholders that are in charge of eCOA production. So first, they need to be aware and to adhere to COA-specific stipulations. In fact, for some questionnaires, the developers have really precise requirements and stipulations, and it's not really often that eCOA developers are aware of these requirements. So it's really important that they know about it. Second aspect, as we talked a bit earlier about, is the adherence to eCOA best practices. So the field of the eCOA field is growing rapidly, and best practices are evolving to reflect the new trends. It's not easy to keep track of the evolution of best practices. So sometimes we have deviations from best practices due to late updates or recent updates that we need to communicate to e-vendors. Another source of issues during screenshot review projects and certification process of eCOAs are system limitations. So platforms that are used for developing eCOAs sometimes have technical restrictions that prevent the vendor from implementing all the requirements communicated by the author and to adhere to all the eCOA best practices. And the last point is one that's common to everyone in the field, I guess. The norm is tight timelines. And actually, time constraints is often a source for issues during the certification process, the digitization and certification process. So we see that the digitization process is really challenging, and it's not always easy to keep track with all the requirements and the rules associated. So how can we help the stakeholders involved in digitization to streamline the process? In the next slide, we will present our strategy at MAPI Research Trust to help the stakeholders and have a smooth implementation and certification process. And this process should integrate both requirements from developers and eCOA best practices, as mentioned earlier. The first aspect of this strategy is coordination. Since we are at the interface, as a licensing authority, we are at the interface of different stakeholders in the eCOA field between eCOA developers, eCOA digitization stakeholders, and also eCOA experts. So we need to optimize the collaboration between all these stakeholders to smoothen the digitization process. The second element we propose is the production of guidance for e-vendors in order to facilitate it and to accompany the digitization process. That's what we call e-booklets, and we will get back to that in the rest of the presentation. Finally, we need to integrate this coordination and the production of guiding material into processes to make sure that from early stages, digitization and certification of eCOAs is straightforward. So first, the first aspect we mentioned is coordination. So we were saying that at MAPI, we interact with a lot of actors of the eCOA field, and in particular with COA developers, the authors who create validated versions of questionnaires, and experts in the eCOA field who have the knowledge about eCOA rules and best practices for digitization. As mentioned earlier, the collaboration with developers is really the core of our activity. And actually, it goes from early stages, from licensing and distribution of questionnaires in paper versions or electronic versions, to the development of technical guidelines, as we will see in the next slides. So this collaboration goes two ways. First, it's our responsibility to receive and to collect information from the COA developers to know the requirements for the development of electronic version of specific questionnaires. But information goes into the other direction as well. Sometimes COA developers, questionnaire developers, don't have the knowledge about the rules and the best practices for digitization. So it's our responsibility to inform them and to provide information about the processes surrounding electronic implementation of questionnaires. And just to hear the last element, actually the COA developers are also involved in our processes. And for example, during screenshot review projects and certification of electronic version of questionnaires, we sometimes have authors, developers involved into reviewing the screenshots and making sure that there is also a respect of the integrity of their questionnaire. The second part of this coordination strategic axis is the involvement of eCOA experts in our processes. So at MAPI Research Trust, in our team in particular, we have people that are experts in technical aspects of digitization and also in eCOA best practices. And this is also important to notice that we are always we have a close link with a network of eCOA experts, and especially the CPATH consortium. On specific projects, we also have sometimes the involvement of scientific experts who will give their feedback on the COA integrity. So, for example, on complex questionnaires or clean rows, sometimes we have these scientific experts who assess if there is equivalency between the electronic version and the validated version in terms of scientific contents of the questionnaire. So overall, what we propose is an extensive feedback during certification process to the clients in terms of content, of course, design and navigability, so technical aspects of the electronic implementation, and also scientific consideration. We will now get into the second part of the strategy proposed by MAPI Research Trust for the certification of electronic COAs. And we will talk about e-booklets. What are e-booklets? E-booklets, in short, are COA-specific guidelines for electronic implementation. So they basically integrate specific requirements from the developer for a specific questionnaire, and they also integrate instructions from eCOA best practices. That should really serve as a guidance for digitization. And as we have seen in the rest of the presentation, both aspects are required, specific requirements from developers and general best practices. How are these e-booklets developed? They are developed in close collaboration with COA developers or copyright holders, so that we can identify the digitization requirements from the developers. So basically, what we have in the e-booklets are developers' rules to digitize their questionnaire. Regarding the eCOA best practices aspect, we have the involvement of eCOA technical and scientific experts to make sure that what is included in the e-booklet, in the guidelines, respects the latest best practices in the field. To date, we have more than 130 e-booklets developed or finalized or in development in our database. In the next slides, we will see concretely how e-booklets look like and what is included in the e-booklet to guide the digitization of COAs. Here you have an example of the type of information that needs to be included in these guidelines. First, you need to indicate the version of the questionnaire that is the source for the development of the e-booklet, and the language. This is not something anecdotic, because sometimes you have differences between English for the UK versions of a questionnaire and English for the United States. So we need to make sure to indicate what version has been used as the source. Then you have indication of the type of instrument, PRO, clean row, off-row, and then really important, when during digitization, the sponsor may want to use to administer the questionnaire on one device or another. And for specific questionnaires, some devices may not accurately be used for completion of a questionnaire. In this case here, you can see that all devices, all kinds of devices can be used for the development of an electronic version of this questionnaire. And this is indicated in e-booklets. For the next slides, we will show you an example of a recently developed e-booklet for the symptom burden questionnaire long COVID that has been finalized recently, that will show the different elements that are incorporated in the e-booklet. This e-booklet is a result of a really nice collaboration with the University of Birmingham. It's a really long questionnaire, 17 scales, 123 symptoms, and more than 130 items. As you can imagine, there may be some limitations associated with the length of this questionnaire. For example, we've had a situation with an vendor who had restrictions in their platform for the number of screens to be created for a questionnaire. So they were not able to implement the number of screens required. After a discussion and a nice collaboration with the developers of this questionnaire, it has been discussed and agreed that shortened versions of the questionnaire could be implemented electronically. And this has been indicated in the e-booklet. And it's really important here to note, the last bullet point, there is a refinement of the e-booklet over time. So we have an initial version of the e-booklet released and finalized, but over the course of the first certification projects for this specific questionnaire, there may be some feedback from us or from the industry to improve or to amend the e-booklet. We're going to show you exactly what happens when we have the transition from a paper version to what's in the booklet. Here, presented in the left panel, you have the paper version that has served as source for the development of the booklet. So it's really standard. You have several questions on a page, and you have indication to turn a page at the bottom here. In the booklet, so you don't need to have a look at everything, but there is a lot of information provided for the implementation of an electronic version. First, as you can see, you have a reference screen that is provided for a specific question that incorporates the content of the paper version, the requirements from the author or the developers, and also navigation elements. So here, for example, back and next buttons that are needed for the implementation of the eCOA. Below the reference screen that should serve as a reference, you have a lot of information regarding different elements for a proper digitization of the COA. You have instruction on screen order, on question skipping. Can a question related to one screen be skipped or not? And this is in link with what has been validated in the paper version, and also discussions with the developers. You have also information about the number of selection the user can have in a specific screen, and also if scrolling is allowed, and a lot more elements, so that you have a step-by-step guidelines for digitization of this specific questionnaire. A last element we wanted to show you regarding e-booklet for the SBQ-LC is the implementation of conditional logic. In some paper version of questionnaires, you have indications that selecting a response will lead to skipping questions and will redirect the user to a specific question. This happens in the background in electronic versions, and we need to make sure that the implementation of branching or conditional logic is done properly during digitization. So what has been decided, again, no need to read everything here, but it's just to show you that in e-booklets, and in particular in this e-booklet, we have included a workflow diagram so that there is a clear understanding on how the electronic version of the questionnaire should be implemented, and the architecture of the questionnaire should be. So this was really a nice example, recent example of a new e-booklet that is that will evolve in the future, we're sure, in the process of certification projects. So we were talking earlier about updates of e-booklets for the one we've just seen. So why should we update existing e-booklets? First, there could be changes in the paper source, and this happens more often than we think. So we need to implement changes also in the e-booklets that should stick to the content of the paper version. Then sometimes we receive additional requirements from developers. So then we need to include these elements into the booklet so that it remains a COA specific guidelines for digitization. As we were saying earlier, the world of eCOA is moving quickly and best practices are evolving really rapidly. So since the beginning of e-booklet development in 2019, we at MAPI Research Trust, we have updated e-booklets following new best practices released, in particular with the CPATH consortium. And finally, we consider feedback, and the collaboration with actors of the eCOA industry is really instrumental in improving the quality of e-booklets and working together towards streamlining the certification process. This was for updating e-booklets, and we also have constant development of new e-booklets. And this is to facilitate the electronic implementation of complex questionnaires with specific developer requirements, and also to answer new trends in the medical landscape. So again, the ESB-QLC was a good example of that because it's been developed after the COVID or during the COVID pandemic, and we are able to react to these new trends. To sum up this part on e-booklets, just want to emphasize, the key points here. Why are e-booklets relevant in electronic implementation? First, this guidance is developed in collaboration with the developers and is based on the content of the paper version. So we respect the integrity of the questionnaire. We integrate specific requirements from developers through fruitful discussions with them. Then we adhere to latest best practices in the eCOA field, and this is thanks to the involvement of technical experts and scientific experts in the eCOA field. All of these elements considered, we can save time during the digitization process because we have a step-by-step guidance for the electronic implementation, and we also have time saving during the certification process by reducing the number of screenshot review rounds. We really want to avoid the substantial changes that we have mentioned earlier. And the final goal with the use of these e-booklets would be to standardize electronic implementation for a given questionnaire. By having a common guideline provided to several vendors or several stakeholders, we expect the electronic versions to be comparable across the industry and to have data comparability achieved. So we have the collaboration and we have the material, the guidance provided for digitization. But how do these e-booklets integrate in the eCOA certification process? We will quickly review here the certification process from the first step of COA licensing. We need to establish a license for a specific electronic use of a specific version of the questionnaire. I keep saying specific because it's really important to note that from the beginning, we need to make sure with the client, with the sponsor, which version should be used as the source, because the content will need to match between the electronic version and the validated paper version. Then we need to identify the client needs. So which devices should be used during the study? And this is by interacting with the sponsor. And for example, we have more and more bring your own device projects for which an electronic version could be used on all devices, smartphones, tablets, and PC. So we need to make sure that the electronic solution adapts to that, and the questionnaire can be implemented electronically on small devices, which is not always the case. Then providing the e-booklet early in the process of digitization will save, as we mentioned, time, and because it will lead the early steps of electronic implementation with specific guidelines for a given questionnaire. The digitization will be performed by the vendor, and usually we have a dynamic collaboration with the vendor at MAPI Research Trust, so that we can avoid any time wasting further down the process. After the electronic version is finalized, the screenshot review is performed with the involvement of several experts in the eCOA field, and then certification is provided to the final user. So I will hand it back to Fotini now for closing remarks.
Yes, thank you, Florent. So yes, here are the key takeaways from today's presentation. The electronic implementation of the COAs should integrate specific guidance and specific requirements. Guidance that, as we mentioned before, is put in place to facilitate the electronic implementation process. MAPI Research Trust strategy integrates inputs from various stakeholders of the eCOA industry, stakeholders such as subject matter experts who follow in the industry latest updates and share the knowledge to all internal teams, scientific teams who are able to back up all this with their scientific knowledge, authors, developers. Our e-booklets that are our solutions and serve as guidelines for electronic implementation. They are a trustworthy source of knowledge that, if used correctly, will save lots of time and work. And finally, let's keep in mind that the coordinated COA digitization streamlines the certification process, which is the goal after all. So thank you very much for your attention. We hope you have enjoyed this presentation. We are open now for questions. You can reach us with the Q&A section. Please feel free to ask.
Thank you, Fotini and Florent, for an excellent presentation. We have received a lot of questions already, and I think that just shows how great your presentation was. We've had so many questions in the chat so far, but we will still give the rest of you a moment to enter more questions into the Q&A box to the left-hand side. Before we begin the Q&A, I'll run through some brief announcements. First, I'd like to thank our sponsors for sponsoring this digital week. Next, I'd like to introduce the Interactive Response Technologies event taking place October the 17th to the 18th in Boston. This year's agenda has just been released this week and features some of the brightest minds in the clinical industry. Our new topics this year include integration, artificial intelligence, automation, supply chain forecasting, temperature excursions, and drug accountability. If you are interested and would like to find out more, please do visit our website, https://informa-connect.com/interactive-response-technologies-in-clinical-trials/. So I think we've given the audience a few minutes while I read out those announcements. So we will head over to the Q&A. Fotini and Florent, are you okay to take some questions at this time?
Yeah, sure, please.
Definitely.
Okay, perfect. So the first question we received from the audience is, have we validated that absence of equivalence is evidence that the questionnaire fails? For example, we could validate a questionnaire that states, is it Tuesday, yes or no? The argument presented here would mandate that the question, is it Wednesday, yes or no, is not equivalent. But this is only semantic.
Yes. Yes, Patrick, this is a good question. Well, what we can say here that the validation is to be done by the copyright holder, and the COAs are its copyrighted material. The content cannot really be changed unless we validate this again with the developer or copyright holder. We repeat that. The COAs are a scientific material, and it has been validated through protocols and with all the instances that we explained in this presentation. We cannot really alter the wording, the content of a question, and just mention this as semantics. The purpose of a questionnaire is to carry out a meaning and a specific content, and we should stick to that.
Okay, absolutely perfect. So another question reads, I actually think you did go into quite some detail about this in your presentation, but if you could maybe clarify on some things or go in a bit more detail. Someone did ask, is there a guidelines or documentation from MAPI on eCOA best practices?
So regarding eCOA best practices, we use the documentation and best practices published by the CPATH consortium, and we integrate the latest developments in the field in regards to that. So it's actually a really good question, because as we mentioned, the field is growing increasingly, and the best practices keep evolving, and we have frequent updates in the best practices, and that may be published by the CPATH consortium and other regulatory bodies. So as a licensing authority, we don't provide as such best practices guidelines, but they are integrated in the documentation provided to the clients during the certification process.
Okay, great. Another person has asked, how do you address the system limitations?
Yes, that's a good question, actually, and comes quite a lot. Well, system limitations can be an issue in this field. We try to look for the best solutions. Usually it goes on a case by case. We go to propose different solutions that might apply to each case. We try to find alternatives and see how we can stick as close as possible to the desired result, which is what we said, the validated electronic version equivalent to the paper version. We can look for feedback and approval with the developer, as long as this does not impact the purpose of the questionnaire. There are solutions, and we usually try to address them on a case by case.
Okay, perfect. Another question has come through asking, you refer to accessibility best practices on slide 17. Are those eCOA specific best practices? If they are eCOA specific, are they published anywhere?
So you mean COA specific for a specific questionnaire, I guess. So the best practices we mentioned when covering the examples are general best practices that we were mentioning. You know, rules that should be used for COA digitization, and usually they are the same applied to all electronic implementation projects, and they are integrated in the booklets. So there is a common core of best practices that is not COA specific, but for all eCOAs, so general rules and best practices.
Brilliant. Another member of the audience has asked, are the 130% 2B e-booklets available freely, or is there a fee to access them?
Yes, thank you for this question. Actually, there is no direct fee to access a questionnaire, an e-booklet. The e-booklet is a deliverable along with the license. So when a questionnaire is to be used in a study and the license needs to be established for the use, the e-booklet is delivered along with the paper versions and possibly any translations that might be involved. Hope this clarifies.
I think I had to definitely clarify it. Another question asked, Are there concrete examples of instances in which digitized COA failed versus a paper version? And in these scenarios, what were the causes?
So usually we don't reach this step. The whole point of having the certification process is to avoid any problem when the study started. But there have been examples of certified electronic versions of questionnaires that have been modified after, for some reasons, without any control, after certification by MAPI. And actually, there have been problems in terms of data collection and equivalency. So we want to avoid as much as possible any of these situations, and that's why we have a really strict review process and certification process for electronic versions.
Another question asks, would you have any suggestions to eliminate the screenshot review?
Yes, that's a good question. We saw in the analysis of the screenshot review projects earlier in the presentation, about 27% had a need to do some substantial changes. Otherwise, there would be possibly a risk to alter the validity of the data that was collected. We feel that without this review, we would put even a study or a trial at risk. So from experience, we see that the screenshot review is needed. And at the moment, we feel, and it is our view, that it cannot be eliminated. We saw, I want to elaborate and remind the examples that we saw about the possible differences in the wording, issues with maybe the color that might be challenging to some users and all that. So yes, I think that it's definitely safe to say that for the moment it is performing screenshot review is quite important and necessary.
Perfect. Another question asks, is it fair to state that the process defined are of benefit to copyright holders rather than patients?
So no, it's definitely not only for copyright holders and developers that the processes have been put in place. The bottom line at the end of the certification process, we want to make sure that the electronic version certified is an optimal version that can be used in an optimal fashion by the user, by the patients. And all the filters that are in place in terms of guidelines, in terms of review, are there to ensure that the integrity of the questionnaire is protected, but also that there is an adherence to best practices and that there is an optimal user experience at the end during the study. So to sum up, it should be beneficial to everyone involved in the eCOA field, and above all to the final user, to the patients.
Yeah, definitely. Another question asks, COA translation has specific processes to follow depending on the level of endpoint it will be used for. Does the translation of the free text in COA have a particular process of translation to be followed?
A particular process of translation to be followed? Well, to be very honest here, I'm not very familiar with the translation part of the electronic validation and electronic implementation. Definitely, this is something that we can get back and give a proper answer to the question.
Just as a complement, sorry.
No, go ahead.
The process. Yeah, the process of linguistic validation. We have at MAPI provided more details about this in a previous webinar. on COA licensing, and it's accessible in replay on our website. So for more information, you can get to that source of information.
Perfect. And Fortini hit a really good point there. Any questions that aren't asked, within a few days, MAPI Research Trust will get back to you. They are provided all the questions and they'll get back to you in their own time. And another question reads, based on some studies that have confirmed that scrolling does not affect usability, it seems that the industry is getting more flexible in regard to allowing it. Is MAPI discussing this change with authors?
So yeah, it's a really good point. Actually, it's part of what we were mentioning, the evolution of eCOA best practices. We follow the trends, and now there is, let's say, a higher tolerance for scrolling in terms of electronic versions of COAs. And some studies have shown that there is no effect on scoring in completing a questionnaire when there are indicators and when there is indication that scrolling is required to access the entire screen. So yeah, this is something that is considered and incorporated in our processes.
Okay, thank you. Another question asks, if COA is uncopyrighted, how could MAPI review the integrity of migration?
Right. Yes, this is a very interesting question. We are happy to say that we have obtained a high level of experience now with all types of COAs. Indeed, the basis that we work on primarily on questionnaires that are distributed by MAPI Research Trust, and we extend our services to those. Given the experience that we have, whatever the type of questionnaire it is, we are able to provide our services for review and migration, actually. Well, on the understanding, obviously, that the copyright holder or the developer or licensing authority allows this. But yes, definitely, MAPI could review the integrity of the migration and provide a certification if needed.
Okay, perfect. Another question reads, is there an opportunity to submit suggestions to MAPI Research Trust for new e-booklets or e-booklet updates?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are always open to receive new submissions and suggestions for the development of new e-booklets when there is the need for that, or to improve or to update the existing e-booklets, depending on new requirements or depending on feedback we have received during screenshot review projects. And actually, in our team, in our eCOA team at MAPI, we have people that are dedicated specifically to development and update of e-booklets. So yeah, that's definitely something we look for in new collaborations and new e-booklets to develop.
Perfect. Now, I think we'll ask the final question here as we are running out of time. An individual actually thanks you for answering their question on where to find the eCOA best practices related to documentation and referencing, but they didn't actually catch the name of the consortium. Could you please say it again clearly?
Yeah, sure, of course. It is a CPath eCOA consortium. We mentioned that during our presentation. We can share details about that after the end of this presentation.
Absolutely fantastic. Well, I think that's all the time we have for questions today. If anyone did submit a question that wasn't addressed, please keep in mind that the speaker will reach out to you directly. This session was recorded. You'll receive notification within 24 hours when the on-demand session is available for viewing. Please take a moment to complete the feedback form so we can continue to improve our Digital Week experience. Thank you again, Fortini and Florent, for a great session. It was absolutely amazing. It was so engaging and interesting. And on behalf of Informa Connect Life Sciences, we hope you have a great rest of your day.